Hello everyone, welcome and welcome back. My name is Jessa, and today's video was originally supposed to be a March TBR. However, it is currently March 18th, and I am still trying to edit that video, and because of that, I feel like it's kind of too late for it to just be a March TBR. So, in hopes of trying to salvage some of the work that I've done in terms of both filming and editing that content, I've decided to sort of update this video with talking about doing sort of like a mid-month wrap up, talking about the books that I have read off of this TBR, as well as some additional books. So I will keep in the original clips of when I'm talking about which books are on the TBR and sort of giving like a brief summary of them. And then at the end, there will be sort of a wrap up. So if you're interested in just hearing my thoughts about some of the books that I've read so far, maybe skip towards the end. I wanted to talk about my March TBR. So I'm filming this a bit late. It's currently the 7th of March. Late. I have already started some of these books, so I will indicate when I have. Also, March is also the month for the Realmathon Readathon that is hosted by Covers with Cassidy, which if you somehow have stumbled upon this video and haven't heard of Realmathon or watched Cassidy's video for it, I will link it below so that you can watch it and learn. But to give a brief summary of what the readathon is, Realmathon is a teams-based competitive readathon, and the current theme for this Realmathon is Carrion City, which is a city and universe that Cassidy has created. These like 4 different families that are the 4 different teams for the readathon, and the team that I decided to go for was the Monarchs. So Monarchs has like different like bonus prompts that if you read books that fulfill those prompts, you get extra points for your team. So the Monarchs bonus prompts were books with politics and books set in like another world. I really like both books that are set in like fantasy or sci-fi worlds and also ones with politics elements. So that's why I decided to choose the Monarchs team. And so a lot of the books that I will be talking about will fulfill at least one of those prompts, if not both of them. As well as because Carrion City is like a city, Cassidy has decided that the bonus prompt for the entire readathon will be urban settings. Alright, so my first book is actually one that I've already started, and it is The Forest King's Daughter by Ellie Blake. So this one is a really like cool and inventive take on like the Fae sort of like fantasy books that we're seeing. So we're following this character named Cassia, who is the daughter of the Forest King or the Sylvan King. And basically when she was younger, she was friends with this boy named Zaru, who was a member of this other fantasy group called the Dracu, who were the enemies of the Sylvans. And when she was younger, Zaru had given her this ring that, unbeknownst to both of them, was actually this sort of like magical artifact that had this sort of prophecy attached to it, that the person who held the ring was to become like someone who is very like powerful and influential. And so we follow Cassia. She's sort of like struggling against like the expectations that her father and other members of her society harness the power, and feeling very demotivated about herself because she feels like she's not worthy of this power. And basically what happens is that Zaru ends up later abducting her as a means to try and get the ring back, and then they sort of end up in this situation where they are sort of like forced to work together to find out sort of more of the secrets about this ring. I'm currently almost done this book. I think I have maybe around 100 to 50 pages left. I really enjoyed the beginning of it, but then it sort of started to like drag a bit, I think in the middle and closer to like the end of where I am now. I still really like it, and in particular I really like the world building. Like I think the Sylvans and the Dracu are really like interesting, and they seem like a unique kind of take on like Fae and elves. The next book that I have is also one that I've already started, and it is The Will of the Many by James Islington. So this one is sort of more of like a sci-fi fantasy book. I didn't get very far into it, and the general like gist behind the plot line is still a bit like fuzzy in my mind, but it is a bit similar to sort of like Red Rising if you've read that series by Pierce Brown. And we're following this character named Vis, who is sort of like an orphan from a persecuted part of this society, who is recruited by sort of this higher up official within what's called the hierarchy, which is basically sort of like a pyramid scheme, basically, of magic, where there's like people of different levels, and they are like harvesting the will of people to give them more strength and power. So he's recruited by someone who is rather high up in that hierarchy to basically infiltrate this military college that is controlled by one element of the society that other people in the society want to have access to. So he has to go sort of like undercover, explore this military college, and sort of try and uncover some of the secrets that are sort of buried there and whatnot. So, like I said, I'm not very far into this, so I haven't even gotten to the part where he's like at the military college yet, so I don't really know much about the actual like big plot line, but so far I was like enjoying this. I'm not like completely sold on the writing style. It is a bit like simplistic, but I still think that it's good and I like the plot line, and I'm not like too keen on the characters yet, but we also haven't met a lot of characters, so hopefully I'll start to like it more as it goes on, because this is one that a lot of people really, really like. So I hope that I'm able to enjoy it. The next book I have is one that's sort of similar to The Will of the Many, because it is a also like a larger, more epic fantasy, and it is The Radiant King by David Daglish. So this is a very recent release. I think this actually came out in maybe like the middle to end of February. But I was really intrigued by the synopsis of this one, because we're following these six immortal siblings who, after one of the siblings basically declares himself the king and sort of seeks to like conquer a bunch of the world, the siblings have to team up with one another to fight against their brother who is trying to conquer the world. And so that seems like a really interesting plot line, and I love books that center political conflicts between families. I think like Game of Thrones in particular does this like really well. But I think this one could be one that I would really enjoy, and I also love the sort of exploration of like what does it look like when kings are immortal. Like I think Brandon Sanderson's Mistborn series in particular does this really well, about looking at the complexities between sovereignty and divinity. And so I hope that this book will also sort of expand on those conversations that I've liked in those other two books. The next book I have is Glint by Raven Kennedy. So this is the second book in the Plated Prisoner series, which follows this character named Oren, who is basically, she's gold touched. So it is set in this world that is inspired by the Greek myth of King Midas, who everything he touched turns to gold. And Oren was sort of like a prized sort of lover of King Midas, who he turned into gold. So she important within this society, not necessarily for who she is, but because of what she represents. So I did enjoy the first book. It wasn't like it didn't like blow me away, but I did really like the setup, and I know from what I've heard from other people that this world becomes like a lot more expansive, and we get like a lot more characters, and there's a lot of politics going on. So that's why I want to pick it up, because I like those political elements, as well as I think the sort of baseline of having this character who is quite literally like a symbol of wealth and power is really interesting. I really hope to see Oren as a character develop more and become like her own person, and I hope that we get to see some of that development in this book. The next book I have, similar to The Will of the Many and The Radiant King, is another big political fantasy, and it is Swordcatcher by Cassandra Clare. So this one is one that I really need to get to, because the second book in this series comes out this month, and I haven't decided which edition I want to get, because I have 3 copies of it. I have this really pretty fairy loot one, as well as the standard edition. So I haven't yet decided which one I would like to get and would like to read this one so that I know whether or not I want to spend the extra money to get the matching Fairy Loot edition. But basically in this one, we follow a boy named Kel who is, he is the sword catcher for the prince, which basically means that he is a body double, which you can kind of see here on the cover. We have these two figures who look very similar, so this is Kel and the prince. And I think there is something that goes on where Prince has some sort of illness and they have to bring in the magical healer, and she is from this group of people who are sort of persecuted for having magic. And so I think there's a lot of interesting elements at play in terms of like Hel being the decoy for the prince and also having a character from a persecuted group who is like recruited by the royals to help them. And I've also read a lot of Cassandra Clare's books before. I've been reading the Shadowhunters books for over a decade and have read almost every single one of them. And so I already know that I love her writing style and particularly her plot lines and her characters. So I hope that I will love this one as well. What I have is sort of a recent addition to my TBR, as it was a book that only came out this month, and I don't know how well it fits into the prompts for Realmathon, but I'd still like to give it a try, and it is Our Infinite Fates by Laura Steven. So the tagline for this one, I think, is have loved each other in every lifetime and killed each other in every single one. And I think that concept is like so interesting about like soulmates who meet across different points in time, and the fact that they're always like destined to be enemies is really interesting. This is also a really beautiful copy of it as well. It's got some gold foiling and gold sprayed edges. So I'm really interested in the concept of this one, and it's also a pretty short read, so I think I can get through this pretty quickly. So the next book I have is another one that was a very anticipated release for this year, and it is The Rose Bargain by Sarah Peyton Smith. So this one, sort of similar to The Forest King's Daughter, is also about Fae. However, it is set in England, and it follows a human protagonist who enters this competition to win the hand of the queen's fairy son. So I think there's a lot of really interesting elements there, and I think the comp titles for this are The Selection meets The Cruel Prince, and so seeing this being compared to The Cruel Prince makes me really want to pick it up because that's one of my favorite books ever. Also, this edition by Fairy Loot is like super, super stunning. And also, the Regency era vibes is giving like Bridgerton, and I think all of us are like in a Bridgerton mood considering like how much they've been teasing us about season 4. So I hope to get to this one this month. Another one that I have that's similar to The Rose Bargain is a recent release as well as a romantasy book, is The Night is Defying by Chloe C. Peñaranda. So this is the sequel to The Stars Are Dying, and I really enjoyed that book. It's basically like we follow this human protagonist who is forced to join this sort of competition being held by sort of like the vampire rulers in this world. At the same time, she also has this mysterious figure in her head coaching her through how to survive in that new environment, like in the trials and amongst the vampires. And as the book goes on, they start to sort of develop this romance with each other, and I keep my summary of that book a bit vague just because I don't want to spoil it for anyone, and as a result, I don't want to talk too much about what this one is about because it picks up immediately after the first book. So I did really enjoy that first one, and I hope to enjoy this one as well. Also, it's another really beautiful one. This is just the standard edition of it, but really gorgeous artwork on the cover. This physical book that I have is actually one that is a bit off topic and off the vibe of what the rest of these books are, but it is one that involves politics, and it is the The Ides of March by Thornton Wilder, and this is a literary epistolary novel that chronicles the time leading up to the assassination of Julius Caesar, which happens on March 15th. So, given that it's March and that March 15th is coming up soon, I want to give this one a try. I really like history, and I studied history at university. Julius Caesar has, for a while, been one of my favorite figures of history to study, just because I think his life was so interesting, as well as just the politics of the time leading up to the establishment of the Roman Empire is really fascinating to me. So I hope that I'll be able to get to this book and enjoy it. Okay, so in addition to the physical books that I talked about, I also have a couple of ebooks that I would like to get to. So the first one, this is one that I've already started. It's called The Witch's Cottage. This is, I guess, her sort of like witch shop in a way. So I think this one, I'm only about 30% in, and it's very short, so 30% is only like 20 to 30 pages or so. So I think it's, so far the setup is really reminding me of the vibes of the spell shop and also Legends and Lattes, which I both liked both of those books. The plot line in this is a lot more simplistic just because of the length of it. I'm enjoying it. I do feel like the romance is moving a bit faster than I would like it to, but it's also a very short book, so I guess I can't really complain too much about it. Another one that I have for review is The Elf Witch by Jacqueline Gilmore. So I haven't started reading this one yet, and I probably should soon because it's coming out, I think, next week. And I was supposed to review it before it's released. But I think we're following a main character who is magic. And in this world, magic is something that people are persecuted for. So I think there's sort of like some sort of like mystery that she has to unravel about like the history of magic and like why it's persecuted, and also like why she herself has magic. I don't know too much about this one just because I felt like the synopsis on it was pretty vague, and also I haven't started reading it. But so the next book I have that is also for review is The Raven Scholar by Antonia Hodgson. So this one is one that I think is set in a fantasy world inspired by ancient India and the sort of politics of that time. And so we're following this scholar who, upon the death of the king, is sort of forced to investigate the king's death and sort of enter the cutthroat world of palace politics in order to, figure out the truth of what happened to him, as well as figure out these sort of dark secrets and sort of dark forces that are maneuvering in the higher levels of society that could threaten the good of the entire nation. So this one seems really interesting, and it is a very long book, so I'm not sure if I'll get through the entirety of it in March, but I hope to at least start it. I also have a couple of books that I have out as audiobooks from my library. So it's one that I've already started, and it is All About Love by Bell Hooks. So this one is more of a like sort of essay type collection about Bell Hooks's reflections on love and her own experiences with love. So far, I'm really enjoying it. I'm only about like maybe 40% of the way through, but I really like the sort of topics and discussions that she's brought up already, and also the way that she's gone about discussing things, I think is really respectful and informative. The second audiobook that I have is The Serpent and the Wolf. So this one is, I think, a sort of romantasy novel following a character who is sort of from this like wealthy family, and she is forced into this marriage with a guy that she does not know for political purposes and to benefit her family. So I've heard some positive reviews about it, and the arranged marriage type of trope is like one of my favorite ones. I think it's a really interesting trope, and I love the sort of like forced proximity aspect of it. So now for the wrap-up section. So this is the video clips that I'm filming afterwards. The first book that I read and finished in the month of March was The Forest King's Daughter. I mentioned, I think, earlier in the clip that I was about partway through this one at the time, and I finished it rather soon afterwards. My thoughts are pretty consistent with what I was talking about before, that I really like the world building, and I think that there's a lot of unique elements to this story, but I think overall, as it sort of went on, especially more so around the like halfway to 75% mark, it started to get a little bit dicey in my opinion. We're sort of both moving too fast and moving too slow. I think the romance was sort of moving a bit too fast in my opinion, but the plot itself was really slow. I think I gave this one 3 stars. I'm sort of like debating whether or not it's a 3 star or a 3.5 star, but I still think that this is a good one to pick up if you're sort of like interested in the themes and topics that it discusses. But there were some pacing issues in it, in my opinion. The next one that I read was one of the Kindle books that I mentioned. It was The Witch's Cottage. So this was an ARC that I received through Book Sirens. This one, also similar to The Forest King's Daughter, I kind of had mixed feelings on. It's sort of like this short, fast-paced, cozy, romantasy novella. I think there just wasn't a lot going on. It was very quick. I didn't really connect too much with the characters, and I actually posted a review on Goodreads where I talked more so about things that I thought the author could have done to improve on some of the character work. Another one that I read was All About Love by Bell Hooks. So I mentioned this one in the TBR, and I think I was halfway through it. Overall, I did really enjoy this one. I believe I gave it 4 stars. I think I enjoyed the beginning section of it more than I did the later sections. I felt like in some of the later sections she was getting a bit more, I don't know if experimental is the right term to use, but I felt like she was more analyzing what other people have said about certain topics than actually providing her own opinions and analysis. But I still think overall that it was like a good book and had some really important discussions about important themes. So I would recommend it. The next one that I read was Swordcatcher by Cassandra Clare. Um, Overall, I really enjoyed this one. However, like some of the other ones, there was a lot of pacing issues with this one. In particular, I don't think anything really happened in the first 150 pages. I don't think that the action really started to pick up until about page 300, which is about halfway through this book. I felt like the first 300 pages probably could have been condensed to about 150. Overall, I did really like this one. I think the themes and topics that it discusses was really interesting. I also like the characters. I think personally that this book could have benefited from a bigger ensemble cast of point of views. I say that because I have read almost every single one of Cassandra Clare's Shadowhunter books, and I think that she actually does a lot better when she has a bigger ensemble cast to work with. So I thought that that could have benefited this story because I felt like we were sometimes getting like information secondhand. So like a character would find out from another character about something that happened to another character instead of actually getting to see those events take place. I think that would have benefited this book. However, I have heard that I think she expands the point of views in the second book, which is The Ragpicker King, which just came out. So I hope to maybe pick up that one soon because I did enjoy this one and I'd like to pick it up while the events of this book are still fresh in my mind. The next two that I have are ones that I have started and not finished. So the first one is The Ides of March. So I mentioned this one in the TBR and that I wanted to read it because the Ides of March is March 15th, which was the day of Julius Caesar's assassination, and this is about chronicling the time leading up to Julius Caesar's assassination. I got about 40 pages into this one and I wasn't really enjoying it. I don't think that there's anything like particularly bad about it. However, there is sort of this author's note at the beginning where Thornton Wilder talks about how he decided to make these changes to the timeline of historical events. And I just don't understand why he made those changes because it's like there's all these like letters between people, and it's like, well, none of these things even came to pass. And obviously, it is like a work of fiction, but if you're writing something that is supposed to be about chronicling the time leading up to Julius Caesar's assassination, and then you're changing the events that happened leading up to Julius Caesar's assassination, it's not really about that anymore. It's sort of a work of historical reimagining almost, because you're making these characters who are dead at the time of the time leading up to Julius Caesar's assassination alive when they've been dead for like 2 to 5 years or so. So it's just weird, and I don't necessarily know if I agree with some of those choices. I do understand that with historical fiction, that you sort of need to make some changes to better suit like a story, but it just seems a bit strange because it's supposed to be about a particular time, yet you're taking events and making them happen in a different time. It just felt a bit weird to me. Maybe I'll pick this one up again. I'm not 100% sure. Another one that I'm part of the way through is Charlotte's Web by E.B. White. I'm currently taking a course on children's literature, so that's why I'm reading this one. I don't really like it, if I'm being honest. I read this one as a kid, and I don't even think I liked it then either. I'm not a fan of White's writing style. I believe I also read his Stuart Little book when I was a kid, and I didn't like that one. I don't know, I just think it's kind of bland. I know that this one probably has a lot of people that really like it and really enjoy it and was very formative for them, but it's just not one that's working for me. Another one that I read that I don't have a physical copy of is The Serpent and the Wolf. I believe I mentioned this one in the TBR video as well. It is sort of like a romantasy book. This one I think so far has actually been my favorite read of the month, with Swordcatcher coming in as the second one. I read it very quickly, so I'm having a bit of trouble like getting my thoughts organized about it, but we follow this character named Thassa who is basically betrothed to this. He's not really a king, Edmund, or something like that, but he's some sort of political leader of a rival nation, and she's basically forced into this arranged marriage by her brother. On top of that, she also has this like magic that is sort of within her that she sees as like a curse that was passed down to her after her mother died. And so there is an interesting exploration of that magic system. I also think that the characterization of our two main characters, Vasa and Reed, who is her husband, were very well done, and I liked the dynamic between them. They had this sort of like back and forth banter, and typically in romantasy books, I don't like that because I feel like it's very poorly done most of the time, with them just like straight up insulting each other or making these like teasing remarks that just don't make sense. But I actually think it fit with the story, and I liked their dynamic, and I also liked the magic system, and also there was these aspects of like her training her magic that I thought were really interesting. I would recommend. And I have 3 more books. So these books were the ones that I read as part of the 48-hour readathon for Realmathon. So I have 3 of them. The first one was Our Infinite Fates. This one was also on the TBR. As I mentioned, it follows these 2 soulmates who are sort of like bound together throughout time and are end up killing each other in the lifetimes that they live. Overall, I did really enjoy this. It was very fast paced and had an interesting premise and setup, and I did enjoy the characters. I liked the female character more. However, some of the timeline stuff is about a bit tricky because we follow these characters as they are sort of like reincarnated and meet each other throughout these different reincarnations, and in each one they have sort of like different names and different identities, and I actually thought that that was a really interesting aspect because we have sometimes the characters are the same gender to see some different like explorations of historical queer relationships, as well as an exploration on gender and identity, which I thought was really well done. However, because there was a lot of different lifetimes, it sort of became really repetitive that we're sort of just getting all these stories of them like falling in love. But sometimes it's not about them falling in love. They're just like, oh, I loved you in a past life, so I have to love you in this one. And I didn't really buy too much into their actual like connection with one another. So there's some elements that I liked, some elements that I didn't like. But overall, I still would recommend this book if you're intrigued by the concept. Another one that I read, Glint. I also mentioned this one in my TBR. I have mixed feelings about this one. I liked the first book, Guild, better than this one. I felt like this one, nothing really happened in it, which is sort of a theme for a lot of these books. I just felt like it was just really meandering. There wasn't really anything too interesting going on. Yeah, I mean, like, it was quick to get through, but honestly, at this point, I don't even know if I want to continue on with this series because these editions are quite pricey. The last one that I read, this was the most recent book that I finished, is This Woven Kingdom. This one was not on my TBR, but it came in as a library hold. I listened to this one partially as audio and partially as the physical book. I think of the three that I mentioned for this 48-hour readathon, this was probably the one that I liked the most. However, I felt like it was also slow. Like, I felt like the beginning was really hard to get into. I also really did not like the main character in this. His name is Cameron, and I was just not vibing with him. I hated being in his point of view. I think he's a really like pretentious and snobbish person, and I just did not care. But I did like our female main character, Eliza. She is very like headstrong. Just her backstory and stuff like that I think was really interesting. So to provide a brief summary, this book basically follows Eliza, who is sort of this hidden heir of a jinn, who are sort of like these supernatural beings who are persecuted in her society. And then it also parallels this by following the crown prince, Cameron. There is sort of a love story element to it as well. And on top of that, this I did not know at first, but I believe this is actually a Cinderella retelling because our main character, Elisa, is like a seamstress, and there's sort of this other character that she's friends with that sort of acts in a way sort of similar to like the stepsisters. There's also like this ball and also the forbidden love element between her and the prince. So I did still enjoy this one. I don't think it is like a favorite, but I still would like to continue on with this series. Another ARC book, which was called The Elf Witch, which was also an ARC provided by Book Sirens. I got about 20% of the way through this and I wasn't really having a good time with it. So tentatively, I've decided to DNF it because the feedback was due for it. So I was like, I'm not going to get this done within the next like 2-3 days. So I'm just gonna DNF it. I had was the Raven Scholar. I don't think I'm gonna get to this one this month. I still have, I don't think it comes out until April, so I still have more time to read it. As for the other books on the TBR, I don't think I'm going to be able to get to the Radiant King or the Rose Bargain. I hope to be able to read them next month, but I'm kind of running low on time. The other one, The Will of the Many, I'm currently about 100 pages in, so I haven't made any progress from what I was at the beginning of the month, but since I've already started it, I hope to be able to finish it. Is The Night is Defying, which is the sequel to The Stars Are Dying. I have started that one. I'm about 40 pages into it. I wasn't vibing with it at the exact time that I picked it up, but I hope that maybe I'll be able to get some progress done in it before the end of the month. I also have a couple of new additions to the TBR, and there are some reasons for that. One of them is one that I forgot to mention, and then another two are actually ones that are for the fantasy bingo challenge, which is actually ending this month, and I completely forgot about it. So the first one is Forged by Magic by Jenna Wolfhart. So this is a sort of like cozy romantasy. We're following this character named Ayala, who is sort of like working on behalf of the king of this nation, someone who identifies people with a specific type of dragon magic in order to root them out. She basically is shipwrecked on this island and meets this guy named Rivelin, who is a fae and a blacksmith. But basically, there's like this trial thing that's going on the island, and Dayala has to help Rivelin as part of where he's allowing her to stay at his house. So I'm about 60% of the way through this one. I put it on pause because of the 48-hour weekend readathon for Realmathon, because you have to start and finish the books in that time period. So this one is to fulfill the, I think it's like orcs, goblins, and trolls prompt where you have to read a book with one of those like fantasy creatures as a main character. So Gaela is a half orc, so that fits for that prompt. The other one that I have, I don't know if this one actually fulfills the prompt, but I'm still going to count it. There was another prompt that was short stories. I personally do not like to read short stories that much. And my initial plan was to read the Dragon Age to Winter Nights short stories. However, given that there has been a lot of negative news coming out about the future of the Dragon Age franchise, I don't really have want to read that at the moment. So instead, I'm going to be picking up the Tales of the Celestial Kingdom by Sulan Tan. So this is some short stories about the Celestial Kingdom world, which is what her series, Daughter of the Moon Goddess, is set in. So this provides some like extra background stories that are inspired by Chinese mythology. So I'm excited to pick this one up. And then the other one, which is the one that I can't believe I forgot to mention, and also my most recent book that's come in, and it's Sunrise on the Reaping by Suzanne Collins. This is the Hunger Games prequel that is following Haymitch. I have not started it. I will be starting it right after this is done because I've been super anticipating this for a long time. So, anyways, that was the brief sort of monthly reading wrap up, part way through the month reading wrap up. I will actually film another video sort of giving more detail about my thoughts, as well as I'm going to try and post more reviews on Goodreads. There is some reviews on Goodreads for some of these books so far. So if you're interested, I will link my Goodreads account below, and also on like my profile in general, so you can go and check that out if you. And also just thank you so much for being here, for listening to me ramble, and also the production quality here isn't very good, and obviously this video is sort of just thrown together because I didn't want to, waste the work that I had done. So I really appreciate anyone who has, even just clicked on this video and stuck around. So feel free to leave any comments and discussions below, like whether or not you've read any of these books, what your thoughts are, what books you plan to read for the rest of March, or what you have read so far in March. Also, if you're doing Realmathon and how you've been enjoying Realmathon, what team you're on, and stuff like that. Feel free to just let me know anything. And once again, thank you so much, and goodbye.